Welcome to LinkedIn Live with personal brand authority, Lita Citroen. Lita is an award-winning executive coach, speaker, and author working with clients in over 30 countries. She helps professionals, entrepreneurs, and business leaders manage the way they're perceived by the people who matter most. From leadership development, executive presence, to strategic communications and social media positioning, Lita's work is thoughtful, motivating, and practical. Get ready for a great program. Here's Lita.
Hello, hello. Welcome to this end of year LinkedIn Live. I'm excited to be with you today because we're going to do things a little different. We have a different format. It's just me, so no special guest today. And we've even got a gift for you at the end of the program. So how about that? Who doesn't like gifts at the holidays, right? So wherever you are in the world, wherever you're joining us today, here's the question I have for you. And it's a little different than I've asked in the past. I'd love to know if you have been on one of my LinkedIn Lives anytime this year. Have you joined us for any conversation thus 2023, right? In this year, have you been on one of the LinkedIn Lives that we've had? If you have, go ahead and let me know in the chat. And if you remember which month it was or who the special guest was, or even what the topic was, go ahead and put that in the chat. But if you've been on a LinkedIn Live with me already this year, please add it to the chat. So here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to do a recap of what we learned over the course of several of these LinkedIn Lives this year, right? This will be number 12. We've done one every month. And your response and feedback and participation has been amazing. So don't worry, we're going to continue them. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. But I'm going to do a recap and give you some of the highlights from the different programs that we've had. Sabrina is going to put in the chat some links that will help you get to those programs afterwards if you want to be able to see the whole content. And then I'm going to give you my 10 tips to set yourself up for success in 2024. And they build on what we learned this year. So stay tuned for that. We're going to do the recap. I'll give you my 10 tips, and then we are going to give you a gift. You get a special gift for being here today. And I'm even going to have Sabrina join me on camera to help address some of your questions. So definitely put your questions in the chat. Cecilia, nice to see you. Thanks for joining again. Put your questions in the chat. We'll get to those at the end. This year, we made a conscious effort based on your feedback to focus on some key areas of growth, right? We talked about effective communication. We talked about building your online presence. We talked about things like how women in leadership can really advance. And so the content and the special guests really aligned to those themes. What I'm going to do now is kind of give you a recap of what we talked about. So in January, we kicked it off with my good friend, Melody Godfred, who is a self-love poet, former lawyer turned self-love poet. And she and I had just a fabulous and empowering conversation about finding your voice and being authentic and being strategic about how you want to show up in the world. And Melody's message is so just invigorating and empowering. And it really kind of frees us up to think about, life is a continuum, our careers as a continuum. It's not an end state. You don't get to a certain job and think, okay, now I'm done, right? We all have something we want to do next. But what we talked about in that session was owning your voice and taking control over your career rather than just leaving it to chance that people are going to want to advance you and provide you with resources. Then we moved into an absolutely fabulous conversation with Latoya Roberts, a dear friend and client of mine. She works for JP Morgan Chase, very, very large company. And what Latoya really shared with us is the ideal path to leadership. And she shared some untraditional paths that she's taken. She's active in the military. She's in the Guard and Reserves, and she's also a full-time employee. And how has she navigated some of those challenges and opportunities? And she highlighted the need to have a mentor. She talked about how important her mentors have been. Hi, Marina. Good to see you. She talked about how important her mentors and sponsors have been in her career. So when we think about growing into leadership positions, none of us, we don't get there by ourselves. We do it because other people help us. And even the most talented, independent innovator is going to need someone else to inspire them, challenge them, motivate them, or support them. So we all get someplace with other people. So it's really helpful to have a mentor. And Latoya talked about how important her mentors have been. Then we moved on, and I had a fabulous conversation with Charles Good, who runs IMS, which is a leadership membership organization. I'm an instructor with IMS, so I'm very proud to be able to offer my content through their platform. And Charles and I talked about some important tools for effective communication. We talked about things like active listening, body language, right? Because if I'm saying to you, I am so happy to be with you today, there's nowhere I would rather be. My words are positive, but if my body language doesn't match, we're sending a mixed message. And we will always trust what we see rather than what we hear. So that's something to pay attention to, especially on video, where we have this tiny little box of context, right? You can't see my entire body moving. All you see is my facial expressions, my hand gestures, which pop into screen every once in a while. But we talked about the importance of effective communication around body language. And if you have challenges around body language, maybe something like eye contact is challenging, or you're not quite sure how to navigate job interviews on video cameras, or how do you modulate your voice when you're on a phone interview? Those are good things to think about, and go back to that session with Charles where we talked about a lot of that. Then we had a fun conversation with Whitney Hake, who is a leader in commercial real estate here in the Denver market. And Whitney is one of those women I have so much respect for, because she really set out to accomplish something and then made it happen. She had a vision. She knew where she wanted to be. She just didn't necessarily know what the steps were going to be. And that's where she and I got to work together to help her build those steps. But Whitney talked about like going into every meeting with an idea, with a nugget, with something of value you could offer. And I think that was such important information, because if you're in a job, maybe next year you're not looking to change jobs, but you want to make sure you keep your job, right? Because that's important. Are you going into meetings with an idea, or are you going in and letting everyone else share their ideas and saying, oh yeah, I was just going to say that, or I was thinking the same thing? Well, why not be the person who starts sharing that idea, be the originator of that idea? We also talked about sharing vulnerability, and that's hard for all of us. And we're going to talk more about that when I give you my tips. But I'll tell you, vulnerability is the new word, right? Authenticity recently made the dictionary as one of the most popular words searched for. But vulnerability is a close second, because vulnerability is where we show people who we are. And it's terrifying. I get that. It is absolutely terrifying, but it is also critical. We moved on and had a wonderful conversation with Michael Quinn. And if you follow Michael Quinn, especially on LinkedIn, you know the power of his content. And Michael really helped us think about how we're showing up on social media. Because if you're in a job search, or again, you just want to keep your job, or maybe you want better responsibility or more visibility on your job, we can't discount social media. I'm almost asked daily, do I really need to be on LinkedIn? Like, it just seems like such a waste of time. Do I really need to do this? And my answer is always yes. Because if you're not in a job search, think about your peers, your colleagues, your competitors, your boss's boss. They are looking at your online activity. We can't imagine that they're not. We have to believe that they are. How do you want them to see you online? And what Michael shared that I thought was so interesting, given his background, is he talked about authentic content. Really share your opinion about things within parameters, right? So you don't want to go off the handle. You don't want to just make things up. But if you have an opinion and it's your feelings and your beliefs, and you feel like you want to choose to share that, he said that is a great way to get content shared online. And then we talked about in that conversation some mistakes that people make. So if you're afraid of making mistakes, that would be a reason to go watch Michael Quinn's conversation. My good friend Param Venkat, who is a master storyteller, he teaches storytelling. He and I had a conversation in August where we talked about what makes a good story. Why is storytelling such an important topic now? I have to say, with most of my clients, I am asked to address storytelling. I am asked by them, do you teach programs on storytelling? And I do, but through the lens of branding and reputation, I teach it. But storytelling is how we communicate who we are. I can leave it to chance that you'll understand my story and why I'm here and what I'm passionate about. But why not take charge of that? Why not be in control of the story that you're sharing with others? That's what he and I talked about. We talked about the three components of a story. And if you need a refresher on that, there's an opening, there's a middle, and there's an end. Pretty simple, huh? A story has to have a hook, right? It has to have an opening. It has to start with once upon a time, or let me tell you about the time when. A story always grabs somebody's attention with a good hook. But then the real meat of the story is the middle. And that's where we unpack in an organized way who we are, what we care about, why we're here, all of those ingredients of a story. And then the end of the story, the close, has some type of a call to action or a way of summarizing what we just shared as a story. So if you're asking someone to consider you for a job, then the end of your story might be, and that's why I feel this position is right for me. What do you think? Right? Or you're asking somebody to do something. So a story always has to have a close. We don't just end the story with, well, so that's all I have. What a flat way to end a story. You want to end a story with a punchline, right? Or I sometimes describe it as, you think of those gymnasts on the balance beam when they dismount from the balance beam and they stick the landing and the arms go up and they're victorious and they're so proud of themselves. That's how we want to end a story. We want to stick the landing. Well, after the conversation about storytelling, my good friend Jolie Miller from LinkedIn came on and we talked about advancing your career. She talked about growing her own career as a woman growing into a very large tech company. And she talked about the importance of investing in yourself and other people. We even went so far as to say we have to embrace self-promotion, which if you've been following me, you know that I constantly am touting self-promotion. We have to. We can't be invisible and expect to get the opportunities and the choices that we want to pursue. We have to tell people who we are. We have to make sure they know us and they know what we care about and what we can offer in value. So that's really where Jolie and I spent our time. We talked about having hard conversations and how do you navigate the differences and the difficulty of those hard conversations. As the year progressed, I had a wonderful LinkedIn live session recently with Sarah Blansett from military.com. You may know I've been a writer for military.com for just about 12 years now. And Sarah oversees the entire organization. Military.com is owned by Monster, which is owned by Randstad. So we talked about like, how do you navigate working with a global company within a global company. Sarah also was in the Navy and was a public affairs officer at the Pentagon. So we talked a little bit about how her communication style had to change coming out of the military and into the civilian sector. So if you are prior military or you're considering exiting the military or you're a military spouse, that would be a great program to listen to so that you can understand a little bit more about how we got to the last conversation. The last one I talked with Bobby Thompson. And with Bobby, we talked about being intentional. about our presence and our influence. We really talked about seeing our career as entrepreneurs, right? No longer do you work for a company for 25 years and they give you a gold watch at the end and you go off into the sunset and play golf. That's not the world anymore. We have to be in charge of our career. We have to be in charge of how we show up and what we want. And we have to ask for it when we want it. And we have to know that we have the equity, we have the credibility to be able to achieve that. The other conversation we had this year, which I think I neglected to mention, was one with Lynn Weineman, where we talked about building an online presence. And in that one, we talked about really speaking your truth, being clear about who you are, showing up consistently, building community online, and finding people who don't necessarily always just agree with you, because I'm a huge fan of diversity of thought, right? I think that's how we learn and grow. But finding people who will challenge you and inspire you and help you grow. Because if we're growing, even online, that growth is what inspires other people. So Lynn and I talked a lot about that. We had so many wonderful conversations this year. And the purpose of structuring it this way was a little bit self-serving, because many of you know that I am working on this next book, which will come out in August of next year, 2024. And the book is called The New Rules of Influence: How to Authentically Build Trust, Drive Change, and Make an Impact. And this is a very different book for me, because in this book, I actually share a lot of personal stories. I'm leaning into vulnerability in a big way, a very scary way. And I'm sharing a lot of stories of clients that I've worked with and colleagues that I've had the honor of knowing who have really built influence in a different way. What I challenge in the book is that our old way of thinking of influence as classic executive presence and rhetoric and theory and formulas and doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. Not all of us want to be executives, right? So the thought of executive presence is inherently flawed. We don't all want to dress the same or have the same goal for gravitas that somebody may have had 10 or 15 years ago. So this book really challenges the old rules and introduces ways that we can show up, be the best version of ourselves, know that we hold our head high, we are open to different ideas and thoughts, and we can be visible and we can serve others. So stay tuned for the LinkedIn Lives that I'm going to be doing starting in January. If you subscribe to my newsletter, we're going to share some more information about that. But I'm going to be building a lot of the themes for next year around the new book, which comes out in August. I'm going to now move into what I think are the 10 tips you need to be thinking about to take control over your career in 2024. As I go, feel free to drop questions into the chat, even if you don't have a question about what I'm talking about, but there's something that we've covered in a previous LinkedIn Live that you want to unpack further. Put those questions in the chat and we'll get to those in just a few minutes. But I did come up with 10 different things I think you can think about, because this is really a great time to be thinking about your career. I know the headlines are scary, and the headlines are talking about job insecurity and potential layoffs. And maybe you've had a recent layoff, and that's terrifying. Unless you saw it coming and planned ahead, that can feel like the rug is pulled out from under you. But this is a good time to be thinking about next. Because things have shifted, because markets are evolving, because new opportunities and new industries are coming online, depending on where you are and what you want, 2024 could be the perfect time to make a change. It could be the perfect time to amplify your value where you are now. And it could be the perfect time to look at growing in your current career path. But here's what I suggest. Number one, every day decide how you want to show up. Decide every day, make a choice. We aren't victims in our life. We aren't victims in our career. We have the ability of thinking about what we want to contribute to the world not just the job you do, but the way you do it, the way you're going to build a career that's satisfying and meaningful to you. So at the end of that career, you look back and go, hot darn, look what I did. Like I drove that. And I'm guilty of not thinking about that. I spent 20 years in corporate America not thinking about control, but just going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And it wasn't until everything stopped in 2008 and I went, what does all that mean? Like, what has my path been leading me to that I decided to become an entrepreneur? So, my advice to you is really think about how you want to be in this world. How do you want to be perceived? And how do you want to be received? Right? There's some alliteration for you. How do you want to be perceived when you walk into a room or somebody gets your resume or somebody sees a LinkedIn message from you or a connection request or your name is shared in a networking setting? What do you want the perception to be that goes along with that? Do you want someone to believe it would be a great opportunity to know you and connect with you? Do you want them to say, oh my gosh, that person's a thought leader in logistics or project management? Or that's somebody I would love to know because I've heard they're a lot of fun to be around. How do you want to be perceived? Because that drives how you're received. How people will receive you will be based on what you tell them, unless you don't. Then you're leaving perception to chance. And when we talk about perception, we know perception can often be wrong, right? I may have known someone who looks like you, or you remind me of, or maybe I knew someone who did that kind of work once. And I have beliefs or feelings about that experience, which I'm going to project onto you if you don't tell me otherwise. So why leave that to chance? That is too important for you as you grow your career. Make 2024 the year that you take charge of how people will see you, know you, and experience you. Number 2, be crystal clear on your why. And I know it may sound trivial to say, focus on your why, but your why is your purpose, right? And as Mark Twain said, there's the important days of your life, the day you're born and the day you realize why. Why are you here? Why are you passionate about the things you're doing? Why are you committing so much of your life to the work or the craft or the relationships that you invest so much in? Start finding a way to introduce that into your narrative. Tell people, not just your technical experience. I had a conversation yesterday with someone, and this person started off by listing all of their technical experience. And I was like, okay, why? And they said, what do you mean, why? I said, well, why did you pursue all that? Why does that matter? Why are you leading with that? Why should I care about that? Have you heard the line that before I can care about what you do, I need to know why you care about what you do? This person started with the what and not even the how, just the what, right? Here's the laundry list of what I know how to do. And I'm thinking, but why? Why do you care? Start finding ways to weave that into conversations. Think about your online posts. Let's say you're sharing somebody else's content. Maybe you're taking one of my military.com articles or an entrepreneur article that I wrote or something that I share online, and you want to share it with your network. Tell them why you're sharing it. Do you agree with the thought or the premise? Do you challenge it? Have you had an experience that relates to that? The more you can let people know why you're sharing something or advocating for something or passionate about something, the more you let them see you, the more you let them know who you are. In conversation, instead of just saying you did something, tell them why it was important to you to share that, why you enjoyed the project or why you found it frustrating or why it was part of a bigger plan for you. Start working your why into more conversations and see how that changes the game. Number 3, find a mentor and a sponsor. A mentor is someone who will guide you. A mentor, as we've talked about in these conversations, a mentor is someone who is farther down the path than you are, It doesn't have to be in their job, but in a skill or an industry or a career. They're farther down the path than you are, and they want to reach back and help you get there. A sponsor can do some of those things too, but they are actively seeking opportunities for you. So in a company, if you work for a company and you're not looking to change jobs, make sure you have sponsors who know what you're looking for and are actively looking for those opportunities within the company. I have a client, an overseas client. She's been with the company a long time. She does really, really good work. The challenge is she didn't have sponsors. So we created a system for her to go out and find the people who have the influence within the areas she wants to grow. We curated a networking strategy so that over time she built relationships with these people. And she was very clear about the kinds of opportunities they typically saw and the kinds of opportunities she was looking for. And what she did is created a sales force. So think about people who can be that for you. You can have sponsors if you're in a job search. Of course you can. But think about it if you're in a job as well, right? You want to grow your role. You want to grow your visibility. You want to make sure you keep your job. On mentorship, it was an interesting thing that happened recently to me. And I shared this in my conversation with Bobby Thompson. Someone I really respect and admire reached out to me and said, would I be willing to sponsor her? And I thought, you're so much farther along than I am in this area. What are you talking about? And she said, actually, I want your help sponsoring me and mentoring me to build a speaking career. Well, that I know how to do. But I thought she was asking about something more in her area of expertise, which is not my wheelhouse. But she asked me to mentor her. And so our first conversation, I asked, what are your expectations? Like, what does this look like for you? Because if you're going to mentor someone, you need to know, is that we're talking once a week? Is that you're asking me to be a sponsor and look for opportunities? Or are you asking me to just share insights and be a sounding board? So setting really clear expectations at the outset is important. Similarly, I reached out to someone recently and asked for mentorship from them. And it wasn't about their job. It wasn't about their industry. It was about a skill they have that I'm trying to develop. And this person was completely humbled. Pardon me for 1 second. Completely humbled that I reached out to them and said, I could use your guidance in developing this skill that I know I have, but I haven't really fully built it out. And I need some advice from you. And I said, I just want to periodically check in with you. I'd like you to track my social media and see how I'm doing. When I run into a roadblock, I'd like to be able to come to you. So it was a situation where I wasn't looking to build my business. I was looking to build a skill. Think about people and how they can serve you as mentors and sponsors. If you're in a job change, you need mentors. You might need someone to review your resume or look at your LinkedIn profile or coach you through mock interviews or help you navigate video interviews when the technical aspects are so foreign to you. Find people who know how to do that skill, or they're farther in their career than you are, or they're in an industry that you're curious about. Find someone to mentor you. Be very clear about what your expectations are, and then you live up to your end of the bargain, and I almost guarantee they'll live up to theirs. The fourth tip I have for you is find your people. Not everybody is going to find you charming and relevant and interesting and funny and compelling. They're just not, right? There are some people who don't get me or don't like the way that I write, or don't like, the way that I sound or the way I deliver my content. That is fine, because the rest of you, those of you joining today, those of you who've been following me on social media and engaging with my content, those of you I see in person, you're my people. And you're the ones I care about serving. Someone who isn't going to relate to my content or is so far outside of what I have to offer, sure, if they get some benefit, that's wonderful. I love to see that, but I'm not marketing to them. So think about who your people are. If you're in a job search next year, in 2024 is when you're going to take control of getting a different job, don't just find a job, find your people. Which companies, which industries, which sectors, which geographical location has the opportunity for you to be around people where your values align. Your opinions don't all have to align, but your values should align. It's really hard to work in an environment where your values don't align. Most of us can't do it. And if we can do it, we end up sick or unhappy. And it's usually not the most productive way to be. So find the people who you resonate with, right? The people that you want to lead, the people that you want to lead you. Start curating those relationships. And remember, if you've got questions, go ahead and put them in the chat because we're going to get to those in just a few moments. I'm halfway through my list. Number 5, become a good listener. I'm an extrovert. I mean, you're probably shocked to hear that. I have no trouble talking and talking and talking. You can ask my kids. I can talk, no problem. But that doesn't mean I'm a good listener. And extroverts sometimes are not good listeners. So just because somebody is outgoing or personable or extroverted doesn't mean they're a good listener. There's an art to being a listener. There's an art to hearing and listening. If you can even take it one step further, if you can listen to someone, really hear them, and then validate, then you've hit the jackpot. Because validation is where the other person gets to feel whole. It's great if you'll be quiet enough while I'm talking, so I feel like the words got out. But if you can acknowledge what I said, and this is where it goes beyond just active listening skills, right? Nodding and paraphrasing and that active listening techniques that we were all taught. Validation is to say, I understand what you're talking about. I understand those feelings, and you really honor the feelings behind the message. Whew, that's powerful stuff. And I would also say, listen to be curious, not to refute, not to challenge or judge. And that's a skill I'm still working on. It's not easy to do. Listen to be curious, listen to learn, listen to understand or to at least explore. Doesn't mean you have to adopt. It doesn't mean you have to be converted, but you can listen to a different viewpoint and go, interesting. I still hold my viewpoint, but I'm interested to learn that, right? It's different than listening to refute. And I'll tell you a secret about me. I was raised by a lawyer. My father was a very strong, very brilliant lawyer. Anything that came out of my mouth was immediately met with a challenge. That was a game to him. He loved to challenge any premise or idea, right? Well, here's why it might not work. Here's where I see a flaw in your logic. And that kind of conditioned me to think that way, right? So anybody that shares an idea, you immediately start going, well, here's the problem with that, right? So you start judging it. But what if you listened just to understand a different viewpoint? That's a skill I've worked really hard on. And I've had to unwind some tapes that I grew up with. But I think it's really important because the world is changing. The world has a lot of difference in it, maybe more difference than similarity. Listening to different viewpoints, even if they're completely different than yours, doesn't mean you're giving anything up. It's not a zero-sum game. It means that I can hear a different viewpoint. I might even be, repulsed by it, but I can hear it, and that might even make my conviction stronger to hear a different viewpoint. I'm not afraid to hear a different viewpoint. So listen to be curious, not to judge or refute. Number 6, be visible. We have to see you. We have to see you online. We have to see you at important meetings. We have to see you in the community. If you're hiding behind a LinkedIn profile, if you're hiding in the back of the room, then how do I know to give you an opportunity? How do I know what kind of a job you're looking for? How do I know how to help you if I don't see you? I can't endorse you. I can't refer you. I can't promote you if I don't see you. So it's really important. Think about maybe just making a 10% effort to be more visible online, right? Contribute a comment to 3 LinkedIn posts in the next 2 weeks. 3 LinkedIn posts, you're going to add a comment. That has just now increased your visibility. Maybe you're going to attend a holiday event that you otherwise wouldn't go to because you don't know anyone there. Okay. That increases your visibility. Look at the ways you can increase your visibility so that maybe in 2024, you are in a job search. Okay. Now more people know you and are in a position to be able to help you. Number 7, create a story inventory. I learned so much in my conversation with Param back in August, which is in that link Sabrina put in the chat that I just noticed. And in that, he talked about having sort of a database or a bank of stories that you can share at a moment's notice. Maybe one is a funny story. Maybe one is a thought-provoking story. Maybe one is a provocative story. But having stories sort of ready to go in a job interview, when you're starting a new job, or you're in a networking situation, that can be really helpful, because oftentimes where we get in trouble is we start sharing stories that we haven't thought through. And therefore, halfway through the story, we go, I don't think I'm allowed to finish this. I've been around a lot of military folks in my last 14 years. And many times I'm part of conversations where the stories are great and the details are lavish. And then they realize they're talking to a civilian who doesn't have any kind of clearance, and they have to stop the story. So I don't know how the stories ended. Think about the stories ahead of time. And also think about your origin story. What I mean by that is going back to what I said about your why. How did you get here? Why did you feel this path was most important? If you joined the military, what is the story around your desire to join the military? Maybe it was a family business and everyone in your family has been in the military, so it was natural for you. Maybe there was another reason. Why did you exit the military? Why are you passionate about writing that book? What's the genesis or the origin of that story? Those are fabulous stories to think about. And think about stories that explain your past. So instead of just sharing the details or the data about, let's say, a gap in your resume or a job change, maybe you made a job change that you're not really happy with. What's the story around that? Give some more context. Stories draw people in. Learn how to tell stories. If you're not good at it, listen to the LinkedIn Live that I did with Param. Watch some LinkedIn learning courses on it. Read some books on storytelling. It is an art anybody can learn, and it is really powerful. Getting to the end of our list here. Number 8, invest in yourself and others. I'm a big fan of service. I'm a huge fan of service. I'm pretty sure that's what drew me to the military, because the military is all service-based, right? It is a military service. And what I've learned so much in working with thousands of active duty and prior military and military spouses over the last 14 years is what service really means. There's an act to service, right? I'm doing something for you. It can be opening a door. It can be putting on the uniform and leaving my family and serving my country. But service is also a mindset. And having that mindset, no matter where you are in your job, in your career, in your life, you can have a mindset of service, which means I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to take care of my family. That's my responsibility to them and my responsibility to my purpose. But I'm also going to take care of other people. I'm going to find ways to serve other people, whatever that looks like for you. It can be small, it can be big, but start introducing little acts of service. Again, maybe it's holding the door open for someone. Maybe it's putting somebody's shopping cart away when you see that, they've got 4 kids they're strapping into car seats and they don't want to walk the shopping cart back. Find little ways you can act in a service mindset. And I venture to guess your drive and the rewards and the good feeling you'll get from that will make you want to do more. But invest in yourself. Definitely continue learning, continue growing, upskilling, elevating your own narrative and your own goals, all of that Just don't forget other people, because it's really important. Number 9, be clear and direct in your communication, but show empathy. I love direct communication. I find it efficient. I find it really clear, right? Which means I know what I'm supposed to do. But sometimes direct communication can come across harsh. So, for instance, let's say you're in a job interview and somebody asks a question, why are you interested in this position? A direct answer can be, well, the pay is good and it's close to home and the hours work for my family. Okay, that's a direct answer, not really a very empathetic answer, right? You're not really speaking to the why, you're speaking to the what. Think about how you can be direct, but also remember you're talking to a human being. Clarity doesn't have to be harsh. We can use tone of voice, we can use messaging, we can use check-ins to make sure that our message is being received the way that we want it, but also that we haven't taken out the other person at the knees, right? There's this technique, or it's actually a technique, and I shared an article on military.com about something called the feedback sandwich. And I think the feedback sandwich goes a little far, but what it means is that you share something warm or positive, then you share the feedback in a direct and clear way, and then you finish with something also validating and somewhat empathetic. If done right, a feedback sandwich can be a fabulous way to communicate and not make the other person feel devastated. But it's not always done right. Most of us use really thick bread on both ends. And then the meat part, the sandwich part, is really tiny. So we need to balance clear communication with empathy. We're talking to a human being. So let's remember that somebody is receiving that message. We want them to receive the message in the right way and not become defensive or argumentative or start challenging us. Or worse, we don't want them to refute the whole message because they feel hurt. Number 10, going into next year, as you think about your career, as you think about what you want out of this thing called life, be intentional with your presence and your influence. This is your life. This is your career. You get one shot, right? In the words of Cher, this is not a dress rehearsal. You get one shot at this thing. Think about it as almost as if you were an entrepreneur of your own career. You're making decisions for yourself. You're choosing what's right for you. You're looking for ways to serve. You're owning it instead of feeling like you're at the behest of someone else's whims or misperception. That's giving up way too much power. I know you can do it. I know you have it in you to be strong and confident and clear and compassionate and all the other C words to be able to build a career that's meaningful. These tips were designed to help you think about the next year differently than you've thought about this year. We have come out of the pandemic. We are in a different frame of mind. The world looks different, and some of the headlines are scary, but some of them are really positive. Be part of that positive narrative, own your career, follow these steps, and see the opportunities that start coming towards you. Again, stay tuned for January when we're going to announce the next LinkedIn Live approach and series. We're going to do things a little different next year, and I think you're really going to like it. And I promised you a gift. So in just a moment, Sabrina is going to give you that gift. What I'd like to do is many of you who have been on these programs all year, or maybe even when I've done LinkedIn Lives in the past, have interacted with Sabrina in the chat. Sabrina is my marketing manager, and I'd like to bring her on screen so you get to see the wonderful person that I get to work with every day. Sabrina, will you join me on camera? Oh, yeah.
I'm right here. Hi, everybody.
Say hi to Sabrina. Everybody, you can put in the chat. Hi, Sabrina. You've all been messaging her and all of that. So what is the gift that we have for everyone, Sabrina?
Well, everybody on the LIDA 360 team pitched in, and we created a great handout so you can have the best tips from all the LinkedIn Lives that LIDA conducted throughout the year, So take it with you, just explore each item, extract the most value that you can, and each of it at the end has the direct link to the session. So you will be able to review the session if you want. If you have any questions, please let us know. We hope that you can enjoy this. I'm gonna go really quick and get the link.
So Sabrina's
can-
you're gonna put it in the chat.
Yes,
Okay, perfect.
it is.
And Cecilia is
Right.
saying hi to you. So
That's why you see me
perfect.
looking around.
Okay. And if you hear an accent, Sabrina, would you like to tell people where you're from?
Yes, I was born and raised in Venezuela. So I have been here in the country for about 11 years. And I don't think that that accent will ever go away.
Probably not. Probably not. So thank you for that. Thank you for putting the gift in the chat. It's something you can just download and, like she said, enjoy it, share it. We created it for you, but if you want to share it with someone who wasn't able to be here today, feel free to do that. That's our holiday gift to all of you. Were there any questions? I saw George's question, which looks like it got resolved.
Yes, we send George the direct link to the Michael Quinn session. And also you can see the entire list on the previous link. That playlist on YouTube, like make sure that you go to Lida's YouTube and you subscribe. We created an entire playlist with all the LinkedIn Live sessions, and we will be adding the new ones. They're going to be awesome, so you don't want to miss it.
And Cecilia is saying, hola, she's from Bolivia, and she totally understands. Now, the two of you don't start speaking Spanish, because then I won't understand.
Well, you do understand a little bit.
As I was talking, and those of you who are watching, if you want to put a question in the chat, please feel free. But Sabrina, I'll ask you, were there any questions that came up for you as we were talking?
I do. And we always have great conversations between Lida and I, but I still get questions. And actually, I took a couple of notes here. And one of the questions would be, when you were talking about vulnerability, such a big and impactful topic right now, and mostly for you and the new book, how do you manage the vulnerability? So many people see vulnerability as a weakness, and that's not how we want to be perceived at all. And mostly if you're trying to reach like a leadership position, or you have people that you want them to look up for you. So how do you manage that vulnerability without sharing all the like dirty secrets out there, but at the same time staying authentic,
right,
and having certain like boundaries that can clearly communicate your heart to others?
And that is something, you know, I'm deeply passionate talking about. One of the things you hear me say a lot is there's a difference between being authentic and vulnerable and being transparent. I think we should be transparent with our reasoning. We should be transparent with how we got, you know, the data that forms our opinion. But I don't think we have to be transparent about everything. I think as adults, we are allowed to keep things private. I mean, kids too, teach your kids. Like, you don't have to share everything. You don't have to weigh in to every conversation in the news. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. And I feel like there's this social pressure that says, you know, you need to tell us what you think about this news event or this crisis, or, you know, what I'm going through. And I don't know where that's written, because I don't think I have to. It doesn't mean I don't have opinions. I just don't know that I need to share them on Instagram with people I don't know and I may not trust. Building vulnerability and authenticity typically happens with people you trust, right? We feel safer with someone, so we're willing to share a little bit more. Had a conversation with somebody yesterday about this, and this person said to me, once I get to know you, I'm happy to share vulnerabilities, but if I don't know you. So I think we have to manage that for ourselves. One of the things, Sabrina, you know, that I'm working through with this book is making sure I am showing enough vulnerability, because I'm asking you to do it, right? And when I turned the manuscript in for a first review, I was terrified. I mean, I even said to my editor, I am excited and terrified to send this to you, because I'm opening some, you know, I'm opening some kimono here, and I'm letting people see who I am in a very honest, sometimes funny, but a really honest way. And that's scary. But if I'm going to ask you to do it as my readers, as my clients, as my followers, I have to be able to do it too. I do gauge that for myself. So there are times, and I think this may go to the how, there are times where I will say, I think I'm playing it safe, right? Maybe I'm writing something and I'm like, I could go a little deeper with that. And then there are times where I go, I think I went too far with that one. Like maybe I shared too much and it really isn't supporting what I'm trying to communicate. So I can pull it back a little bit. So I think it takes some practice. I'm still working through that. I think most of us are. Just taking baby steps. And if you've got a canned, safe answer, maybe try one that isn't so safe, doesn't feel as rehearsed or scripted, and share that one and see what the response is.
Yeah, and that's the way that people have connected with you in the past. When you have shared like your heart, immediately there's somebody that jumps in and says, "Oh my gosh, I have gone through that, and I feel it," and that's the way of connecting. That's what you have been doing.
Well, and that's my purpose, right? So if that's not your purpose, then fully find a different strategy. But my purpose and my brand and my goals are to be that. So yes, I have to absolutely lean into that. Marina's saying hi to you too. Marina, Sabrina, there's some alliteration. What other question do you have?
Well, another question was a little bit about self-promotion. So I know that is such a hard thing for some people, especially somebody like me. I'm an introvert, and you know that. And it's like, how do you manage that self-promotion without reaching that point of being like too braggy and just talking about me? How do you manage that, especially when you're in a company and you just want to keep on growing and you want to be seen for who you are, but you don't want to be the proud and loud person?
Right. And I think that even kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, right? We can be too vulnerable. We can be, during COVID, there were a lot of people who were sharing, every struggle and fear and bad dream they had. And they were doing it to reach out, but it almost became too much. So it can start seeming a little like the me show. I think we're always balancing that. And knowing that, other people aren't thinking about us as much as we think they're thinking about us. I think that was Eleanor Roosevelt's quote, comes to mind. But if I don't know who you are, if I don't see you, how can I serve you? How can I help you? Like one of the things I know for you, Sabrina, is you share about the things that are important to you. So you share about your faith, you share about social media trends and marketing trends. Those are things that are important to you. So as you're sharing those messages, you're promoting the message, but you're also promoting yourself. And self-promotion is not a bad thing if done right. And I think most of us have a pretty good filter for when something looks a little too gratuitous, right? Too, large and in charge. And if we've got a good community, they'll also help hold us accountable and say, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of your posts right now. Maybe dial that down a little bit. But if you're in a service mindset and you've got an opinion or an idea or a product or a service or something that is of value to other people, then it's almost incumbent upon you to share that. So service mindset would say, I'm going to use myself as a promotion vehicle to get this message out there.
Yeah, I think that part is so key, the service mindset.
Cool.
And I got one more, and I really enjoyed. I think that you either added to Control the Narrative, one of your books, or you talked about it.
Right there.
I'll put the link in a minute. You either added to that book or it was in one of your articles, but I know I read it and we have discussed about it, and it's the part of perception. And that goes along with the last LinkedIn Live session that you had with Bobby, when he was saying, be intentional about your presence and your influence. And you had this example of, do you want to be that nice guy that gets invited to the barbecue parties? Right. Or you want to be perceived at that thought leader that gets invited to that vision meeting or that important meeting with leadership. So how to balance that, how to be very intentional with your presence, with your influence, and how do you want to be perceived?
I had a client call recently, and you know about this, with someone who's just been promoted into an executive position. So is now managing people he used to work with, right? He used to be their peer. Now he's the director. And some of the struggles he's having are not being assertive enough, not being taken seriously, people letting deadlines slip, and navigating that. I was their friend and now I'm telling them what to do, sort of thing. And I asked him a question I often ask a client, and that is, are you more concerned with being liked or respected? And there was dead silence. Because most people will say respect, but most people, in my experience, want to be liked. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be liked. There's nothing wrong with that, right? We want to feel validated and cared for and liked by the people around us. But respect can include like, but it can also mean, I don't like you very much right now, but I respect your decision. And I think sometimes that's where when we think about perception, we try to make sure everybody likes us, but that doesn't mean they're going to advance us. That doesn't mean they're going to give us additional resources or put us in a visibility position or give us that opportunity to lead the meeting, let alone be in the meeting. They have to know what we care about. And if they respect us and they value what we offer and they like us, that's fabulous. But, thinking about that question for yourself is often a way to get to the heart of that.
I agree.
I know we're just about out of time. I don't see any other questions popping in. So I want to thank my lovely right-hand person, Sabrina, for finally coming on camera with me. I want to thank all of you for joining us today, or if you're watching the recording, I hope you enjoy what you've heard. And I think, Sabrina, from all of us at LEADA 360, we wish you all a very healthy and happy and safe holiday season and a wonderful 2024. Be sure to follow me. Be sure to check out my newsletter, because we're going to be talking about some great ideas and content coming forward in 2024. Happy holidays, everyone.